Let's just take a follow-up text question from Darren in Bexhill, who says, if Putin is sending spy ships to our coastline, surely it's time to boost spending on our armed forces now. Well, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, says the Royal Navy has been monitoring a Russian ship called Yantar, which carries surveillance equipment and can launch drones down to the seabed when it was sailing around British waters earlier this week. This evening, the chair of the Defence Select Committee, Labour MP Tan Dhesi, has told LBC that the government needs to set out exactly when it plans to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. I'll add a rider to that because I think any government is going to have to increase defence spending to nearer 4 or 5% of GDP in the next few years. Why won't, Luke Pollard, why won't you put a timetable on this?
I mean, we have put a timetable on the announcement. We will be announcing a path to 2.5% of GDP in the spring. At the same time, in the spring, we'll also be publishing the Strategic Defence Review.
I thought that had been delayed to the autumn.
No, we're still intending to publish the Strategic Defence Review. And the key bit about this is we need to fundamentally adapt our armed forces, because the lessons of what we're seeing in Ukraine is challenging the way we structure our forces. On a very basic level, if you take how our army works, previously they worked on the deep and the close. And the words are important. The close were close up front, where you could have a tank firing at an enemy position. That was the close. And further beyond that, it was the deep, where you fired a rocket at. What we now know in Ukraine is instead of the close being a matter of tens of kilometres, the close is now 800, 900 kilometres. It's fundamentally changed how we fight our war, and we need to restructure our forces. So it's not just a matter of what money you're spending. And, in the budget, we increased defence spending by £3 billion next year, which is an important step in the right direction. But we need to make sure we're spending it on the right kit and capabilities. And one of those is precisely in relation to the Yantar. We need more capabilities that protects our undersea cables, because they're vital not just for energy transmission, both gas and electricity, vital for telecoms. Our entire economy relies on the internet, and the internet doesn't flow through satellites primarily. It flows through undersea cables. And we know that if Russia loiters over our cable infrastructure, there's a risk to it. And that is why we've been very clear today, the Defence Secretary in the House of Commons, saying, we see you, Russia. We know what you're doing, and by calling it out, and that's the reason why we've published for the declassified, which is unusual, that we surfaced a Royal Navy nuclear submarine alongside the Yantar, at which point the Yantar left the area of concern, publishing it very clearly to say, we see what you're doing, Russia, and this should be acting as a deterrence from that happening in the future. But we're going to have to invest in different capabilities in the future to keep our country safe and to keep our allies safe. That means not just what we spend, but what we spend it on as well matters. Just on the Strategic Defence Review, I'm sure I wasn't imagining that it might be delayed till October. The Telegraph were reporting 3 days ago that it says Labour's Defence Review could be delayed until the autumn, despite pressure on the government to increase military spending according to industry figures. So can you guarantee us that it will be this spring? I mean, the Defence Secretary has been clear today. We expect to publish the Defence Review in the spring. Equally, we expect to set out a path to 2.5% as well. But are you beginning to feel that 2.5% might not be enough, given what's going on, particularly with Russia, given this kind of incident? We've seen Chinese boats, I think, in the Baltic doing damaging the undersea cables, which if some of those are cut, I mean, that's a very bleak future indeed. I mean, we have deployed forces, RAF P-8 Poseidon aircraft, to support the NATO activity in the Baltic, precisely in response to the cable cutting incident that we've seen there over Christmas. But at the moment, we spend about 2.3% of GDP on defence. And the commitment that we made at the general election is to move that to 2.5% of GDP. Now, that's a big, substantial increase. But as the Minister for the Armed Forces, I feel sometimes that the debate around just which percentage point we're spending on misses something in the fact that if we don't transform the structure, the shape, the capabilities we're fighting with, we can spend whatever percentage on, but it won't be the deterrent capabilities we need. And that's why we've got to get this right. When John Healey says we will not shy away from robust action to protect this country, what does that actually mean? I mean, what kind of robust action? Like if a Russian ship like this does something similar again, do we sink it? Well, what the Defence Secretary set out today, not just the declassification of what is a very serious operation that involved the Royal Navy, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary and the RAF, but publishing details of the activities of a nuclear submarine is very unusual. It is a strong message that we're sending. But in his statement, he made something which I don't think has been picked up in some of the media commentary. He changed the rules of engagement of our forces, which enabled them to be much closer to the Russian vessel than normally would be the case. Normally, in any type of confrontation like this, it's not like in the movies where they're like jamming up against each other. You would normally do it at a distance. By changing the rules of engagement, so the proximity between the Russian vessel, the spy ship, and our Navy assets was much, much closer. That is a very strong sign, a very strong signal to those forces that we are taking this much more seriously and that we will robustly defend our infrastructure.